My ex-wife came back 6 months pregnant, claiming the baby was mine, but we both knew I was sterile. My name is Tony, and the moment Joanna stood on my doorstep with tears streaming down her face and a newborn in her arms, I knew exactly what game she was playing. She'd left me for another man, burned our marriage to the ground, and now wanted me to be her safety net. But to understand why I closed that door in her face, why my silence crushed her more than any screaming match ever could, you need to know how we got here. It started on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were our nights. I always came home early with takeout from that Thai place on Morrison Street, the one where they knew our order by heart. This particular Tuesday I left work at 3, stopped for her favorite pad thai and those spring rolls she loved, even grabbed roses from the corner store because our anniversary was coming up and I wanted to start celebrating early. I walked through our front door at 4:30, and the house was empty. Joanna's phone sat on the kitchen counter, buzzing like an angry wasp. I wasn't the type to check her phone, never had been in 7 years of marriage. But it wouldn't stop. Buzz after buzz after buzz. When I picked it up, I told myself I'd just silence it. Then I saw the name, R. The preview made my blood run cold. Last night was incredible. When can I see you again? My hands started shaking as I unlocked her phone. She'd never changed the passcode from our wedding date. The messages went back 3 months. Hotel addresses. Times. Can't wait to taste you again. He suspects nothing. I heard her car pulling into the driveway. 30 seconds until she walked through that door. 30 seconds to decide who I was going to be. Please, before I continue, kindly like, share and subscribe for more interesting videos. I set her phone on the dining table and arranged the flowers in a vase like nothing was wrong. When Joanna walked in, she was humming, some song I didn't recognize. She stopped when she saw me sitting there in the dark, her phone glowing between us like evidence at a crime scene. Tony? Why are you home so early? Her eyes darted to the phone. I watched her face cycle through confusion, recognition, then something that looked almost like relief. Who's Ryan? I asked, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was trying to break through my chest. She didn't even try to lie. That's what killed me. She just sank into the chair across from me and said, He's someone I used to date. Before you. And you're dating him again now. It wasn't a question. Joanna looked at me, then really looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Pity. Tony, you're a good man. You've given me everything. A beautiful home, stability, security. But that's all it is. Safe. Predictable. When I'm with Ryan, I feel alive again. I feel like the person I used to be before I became your wife. I remembered our early years. She used to drag me to concerts, midnight road trips, spontaneous weekend getaways. I was building my consulting business then, working 80-hour weeks, missing most of those adventures because I was securing our future. She'd stopped asking me to come along about 3 years ago. I'd thought it meant she was growing up, settling down. I was an idiot. I want a divorce, she said, standing up. I've already talked to a lawyer. The flowers I'd bought sat between us, already starting to wilt. I spent the next week in hell. Joanna moved into her sister Lisa's house while the lawyers handled the paperwork. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every corner of our home screamed her name. The coffee mug she always used. Her sweater on the couch. The dent in her pillow. I wrote her a letter, 10 pages of memories, promises to change, couples therapy brochures I'd researched until 3 in the morning. I remembered our wedding vows, the way she'd cried when I promised to love her through everything. I drove to Lisa's house with that letter and a bouquet of sunflowers, her actual favorite flower, not roses. Roses were just what I'd gotten comfortable buying. Lisa opened the door with tears already in her eyes. Tony, I'm so sorry. She's not here. When will she be back? Lisa's face crumpled. She moved in with him yesterday. With Ryan. The letter felt like lead in my hands. I'd known Ryan's name from the messages, but I hadn't let myself think about who he really was. Ryan, her college boyfriend? The one who cheated on her and left her broke. Lisa nodded. That's the one. I warned her at your wedding, you know. Told her she was marrying safety because Ryan had broken her so badly. I told her one day she'd wonder, what if, and ruin everything. She wiped her eyes. I didn't think I'd be right. She handed me a small box. She left this. Said you'd want it back. Inside was my grandmother's engagement ring, the one I'd saved for 2 years to resize, the one Joanna had cried over when I proposed on that beach in Santa Monica. It looked so small and worthless now. 3 months passed. I signed the divorce papers in a lawyer's office that smelled like old coffee and broken promises. Joanna didn't even show up. Her lawyer handled everything. I moved through my days like a ghost, working 12-hour shifts to avoid going home to our empty house. I didn't know then what was happening in Ryan's apartment across town, but Joanna's sister Lisa told me later, after everything fell apart. She said Joanna called her one night, whispering so Ryan wouldn't hear. Ryan's place wasn't the romantic adventure Joanna had imagined. It was a one-bedroom apartment in a sketchy part of town, always cluttered with empty beer bottles and pizza boxes. The consulting business he'd bragged about was actually driving Uber. The spontaneous adventures had become Joanna cooking dinner after working her new waitressing job while Ryan played video games. "Babe, I need $400, he'd say casually, controller still in his hands. Car payments late. It was the fourth time that month. Joanna had started keeping track in a journal Lisa found later. One entry haunted me when she read it to me. Tony paid for everything and never made me feel small about it. Ryan asks for money and makes me feel stupid for questioning it. Tony planned our future. Ryan can't plan past Friday. What have I done?" But she didn't come back. Not then. Her pride wouldn't let her admit she'd destroyed a 7-year marriage for a man who couldn't even pay his own car payment. Then one morning Joanna woke up nauseous and everything changed. Joanna took 3 pregnancy tests in Ryan's grimy bathroom. All positive. Lisa told me she spent her last $60 on steak for Ryan's favorite dinner, practicing how to tell him in the mirror. "I'm pregnant," she'd said over candlelight, trying to smile. Ryan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Whoa, Joe, we never talked about kids." "I'm not. I need space to think about this." He grabbed his keys. "I'm gonna stay at Derek's tonight. Just need to clear my head." He never came back. This part still makes my blood boil even now. While Joanna was sitting in that apartment waiting for Ryan to come home, I was looking at old photos on my phone. Pictures from our fertility clinic visits 2 years earlier. The doctor's words still echoed in my head. "Tony, your sperm count is extremely low. Natural conception is highly unlikely without medical intervention." I'd cried in the parking lot that day. Joanna had held me, stroked my hair, whispered, "We have each other. That's enough." I thought she meant it. Now I understood. She'd probably felt relieved. One less thing tying her to our boring, stable life. Ryan blocked Joanna on everything by day 3. His roommate Derek finally told her the truth. He took a job in Arizona. Left yesterday. Sorry. She was 8 weeks pregnant, alone, and the divorce from me had just been finalized. Later, she tried to pretend the timing was confusing, that maybe the baby was mine. But we both knew the truth. The last time we'd been intimate was 4 months before I found those messages. She'd pulled away from every kiss, slept on the couch, flinched when I tried to hold her. 7 months pregnant, Joanna got fired from her waitressing job for missing too many shifts. Morning sickness had made her unreliable. The eviction notice appeared on her studio apartment door 3 days later. She was 2 months behind on rent. I didn't know any of this was happening. I'd blocked her number, blocked her on social media, told our mutual friends I didn't want updates. I was trying to heal, trying to rebuild. I'd started seeing a therapist who told me I'd made myself too small in my marriage, always accommodating, always providing, never asking for anything in return. But Lisa called me one night, her voice shaking. "Tony, I know you don't want to hear about her, but she's 7 months pregnant and living in her car. I'm scared for her." I felt nothing. That's what shocked me most. The man I used to be would have raced over there with money and solutions. The new me just said, "She made her choices, Lisa. I can't be her safety net anymore." "I know," Lisa whispered. "I just thought you should know." I hung up and went back to dinner with Sarah, a woman I'd met at a work conference. She was kind, straightforward, asked me about my day and actually listened to the answers. We weren't serious yet, but she made me remember what it felt like to be wanted, not just needed. Meanwhile, Joanna sat in her studio apartment scrolling through old photos of our house, specifically the guest room we'd painted yellow, just in case we ever figured out the fertility issues. She later told her sister she could still remember how I'd rubbed her feet without being asked, made her soup when she was sick, sent her good morning texts every single day for 7 years. 2 months after her son Charles was born, Joanna showed up at my house. It was 9 p.m. on a Friday. Sarah was over, laughing at something on TV. I heard the doorbell and assumed it was a delivery. Instead, I opened the door to find Joanna holding a crying baby, her hair unwashed, her eyes hollow with desperation. "Tony," she said, her rehearsed speech already crumbling. "He's yours." I was confused about the timing. "Please, I need help." Sarah appeared behind me. "Everything okay, babe?" Joanna's eyes went wide, seeing another woman in what used to be her home, hearing her call me babe, like it was natural. Something in her face just collapsed. I felt Sarah's hand on my shoulder, supportive but letting me handle it. That's when I knew Joanna and I had never had that true partnership. She'd needed me to fix everything while she just existed, floating through life waiting for something more exciting. No, Joanna, I said, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. We both know what the doctor said 2 years ago. Don't insult me like this. But the timing? You wouldn't let me touch you the last 4 months of our marriage. You slept on the couch. You said you needed space. Then you filed for divorce 3 weeks later. My hands were shaking now. The only way that baby is mine is if it's a medical miracle, and we both know you weren't with me when he was conceived. You were with Ryan. The baby screamed louder. Joanna's face went red. Your parents deserve to meet their grandson. I started closing the door. Goodbye, Joanna. She jammed her foot in the doorway. You're just going to abandon your own son? He's not my son. I gently moved her foot and closed the door. I heard her sobbing on the porch for 20 minutes before she finally left. Sarah held me that night while I shook with rage and grief. You did the right thing, she whispered. But I wondered if I had. My father had always taught me to be responsible, to own my obligations. Was I becoming the kind of man who turned his back on a child? Then Joanna made her next move. My mother called me the next morning, her voice sharp with anger. How dare you abandon your own child? Joanna called me last night, crying, saying you won't even look at your son. Mom, he's not my son. She has a baby, Tony. Your baby. And you're playing house with some new woman while your child suffers? My father got on the line. We raised you better than this. A real man owns his responsibilities. Those words cut deep. When I was 12, I'd watched my uncle abandon his pregnant girlfriend. My father had said exactly that. A real man owns his responsibilities. He'd made me promise I'd never be that kind of man. Now he was weaponizing my own morality against me. Come to the house tomorrow, my mother demanded. We're going to sort this out. I knew Joanna would be there. I knew this was her play, turn my family against me until I caved. The old Tony would have folded. But the old Tony had also let his wife walk all over him for years. I spent that night preparing something Joanna didn't expect. A manila envelope full of truth. They all showed up at my door the next day. My parents, Joanna holding baby Charles, even her sister Lisa looking uncomfortable. Sarah had offered to stay, but I'd told her this was something I needed to handle alone. My mother started immediately. Tony, we didn't raise you to. I filed a restraining order against Joanna yesterday, I interrupted, pulling out the envelope. This is your copy, Mom and Dad. You should know what you're defending. My father's face went pale. A restraining order? Against your wife. Ex-wife. And yes. I pulled out the documentation. She showed up screaming at 2 a.m. last Tuesday, waking up the entire neighborhood. Mrs. Chin next door called the police. Before that, she came by my office and caused a scene in front of my boss. Before that, she sat in her car outside my house for 6 hours until Sarah called the cops. My mother looked at Joanna, who was staring at the floor. And now she's claiming I fathered this child when we both know that's impossible. I turned to Joanna directly. Tell them. Tell them about the fertility clinic. Tell them what the doctor said about my sperm count. Joanna's face flushed red. That was 2 years ago. Things can change. Tell them how you wouldn't let me touch you for 4 months before you left. How you slept on the couch every night. How you filed for divorce 3 weeks after our last time together. My voice cracked. Tell them how you went through our entire savings account to move in with Ryan, how you quit your job to play house with him, how you burned down 7 years for a man who abandoned you the second things got hard. The silence was deafening. Charles had even stopped crying. My mother's voice was small. Joanna, is this true? Joanna burst into tears. I made mistakes, okay? But Charles is innocent. He needs a father. He has a father, I said quietly. His name is Ryan. He lives in Arizona. Maybe you should ask him for help instead of trying to trap me into raising another man's child. My father stood up, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Tony, son, I think we need to talk privately. No. I pulled out another folder. You wanted to guilt me into being responsible? Fine. Let me show you what responsibility actually looked like in my marriage. I handed them printouts, every text where I'd begged Joanna for couples therapy. Every dinner reservation she'd canceled to hang out with friends, Ryan. Every time I'd said, I love you, and she'd said nothing back or just you too, like I was her roommate. My journal entries where I'd tracked our intimacy, 62 days without so much as a kiss before she left. I tried everything, I said, my voice breaking. I worked myself to death to give her the life she wanted. I suggested therapy, date nights, a second honeymoon. She chose him anyway. And now she wants me to save her from the consequences. My mother was crying now, reading through the messages. Oh, Tony. I looked at Joanna. DNA test. Today. We all go to the clinic right now and we settle this. Joanna's face went white. I don't think that's necessary. DNA test or you never contact me or my family again. I turned to my parents. And if you keep supporting her lies, you won't contact me again either. I'm done being manipulated. We drove to the DNA testing clinic in 2 cars. My parents with Joanna, me alone. I watched Joanna in the parking lot through my rearview mirror. She sat in the back seat, not moving, staring at the building like it was a courthouse where she was about to be sentenced. 5 minutes passed. 10. My mother got out of the car and opened Joanna's door. They talked for a moment. Then Joanna shook her head violently, clutching Charles tighter. My mother walked to my car, her face streaked with tears. She won't go in. Then you have your answer. Tony, she's scared. She's guilty, Mom. There's a difference. I started my engine. You need to decide right now whose side you're on. Mine, or the woman who destroyed your son and is now lying about your grandchild. My mother looked back at Joanna, still sitting in the car, then at me. I saw her wrestling with it, the grandmother she dreamed of being versus the truth she couldn't ignore anymore. We believe you, she finally whispered. I'm so sorry, Tony. My father came over then, put his hand on my shoulder through the window. We failed you, son. We should have listened. I nodded, unable to speak. They went back to tell Joanna it was over. I watched her reaction through the windshield, the moment she realized she'd lost everything. Her face contorted with rage, then grief, then something like acceptance. She drove away alone, Charles crying in the back seat. My mother called her a week later. Stop contacting us, Joanna. We know the truth now. I blocked her final number. Changed my locks. Started therapy twice a week. 6 months passed like water through my fingers. Sarah and I got serious. She moved in, met my parents, started talking about our future in that easy way Joanna and I never had. My mother babysat Sarah's 3-year-old niece one weekend and sent me photos captioned, "Practice grandbaby." It should have felt cruel to Joanna, but honestly, I didn't think about her anymore. Then one Saturday at the farmer's market, I felt eyes on me. I was carrying Sarah's purse, laughing at something she'd said about overpriced organic tomatoes, when I saw Joanna across the street. She was behind a fruit stand, partially hidden, holding Charles in a second-hand stroller. Our eyes met for just a second. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. I just felt nothing. Like looking at a stranger who vaguely resembled someone I used to know. Sarah noticed my distraction. You okay? Yeah, I said, taking her hand. I'm perfect. We walked away and I didn't look back. I found out later through Lisa that Joanna had written everything down, a confession of sorts, trying to make sense of what she'd done. Lisa read me one part over the phone. They say you don't know what you have until it's gone. That's not true. I knew. I just thought I deserved more. Passion. Excitement. Spontaneity. What I got was poverty, abandonment, and a man who looks through me like I'm a ghost. Tony didn't crush me. I crushed myself. And his silence? That's not cruelty. That's just what I earned. 2 weeks after I saw her at the farmer's market, Ryan showed up at her apartment looking rough, asking if he could meet his son. Joanna closed the door in his face without a word. Some lessons come too late. And some doors, once closed, don't open again. I'm getting married next spring. Sarah's everything. Joanna wasn't. Present, honest, partnership-minded. My parents are helping plan the wedding. We're happy. And Joanna? She's exactly where her choices led her. Alone, struggling, and finally understanding that safety wasn't the prison she thought it was. It was the gift she didn't know how to keep.